I heard the tires screech before I heard my son scream. That one sound still haunts me. It was supposed to be the happiest Saturday morning of the summer. The sun was bright, the air smelled like fresh cut grass, and my 10-year-old son, Ethan, was finally doing something he'd dreamed about for weeks, running his very own lemonade stand. He woke up at 6 a.m., bouncing with excitement. I watched him squeeze lemons with all his strength, measure sugar carefully, and mix everything with a seriousness that made me laugh. He even wiped the table twice, making sure everything looked official. He wasn't just selling lemonade, he was building confidence, learning responsibility, and having fun. By 10 a.m., our quiet HOA neighborhood had come alive. Kids rode bikes up and down the sidewalk, neighbors walked their dogs, and several people came over to buy a cup from Ethan. Each time someone complimented him, he stood a little taller. Then she arrived, Karen. Even from inside the house, I could feel the temperature drop. Every neighborhood has a Karen, but ours was a special breed, loud, entitled, and always ready to make a problem out of nothing. She marched down the sidewalk with a furious energy, dragging her son behind her like he was royalty. Ethan waved politely, just like I'd taught him. But she didn't wave back. Instead, she demanded a free lemonade, because HOA board members deserve special treatment. Ethan, still smiling nervously, told her every cup was $2, same rule for everyone. Her expression twisted instantly. The peaceful morning shattered. She leaned forward, shouting words I couldn't yet hear. Kids stopped playing. Dogs stopped barking. Even the wind felt like it paused. And then she stormed back to her SUV. And that's when I heard the screech. The moment everything changed. Karen's face turned red, and her eyes bulged like she was about to explode. I could see the fury radiating off her as she jabbed her finger straight at Ethan's chest. "Do you know who I am?" she screamed. "I'm on the HOA board. You should be grateful I'm even allowing this stand." Ethan, nervous but determined, didn't back down. "Ma'am," he said politely, "it wouldn't be fair to give you free lemonade when everyone else has to pay." Her reaction was instantaneous. She let out a shrill, high-pitched scream that made the neighborhood dogs bark and several neighbors peek out of their windows. It wasn't just anger, it was a full-blown, entitled rage. Her son, standing behind her, smirked like this was some kind of game. But for Ethan, it was serious business. He wasn't about to be bullied, even by an adult. Karen's voice grew louder, echoing down the street. "You will respect authority. You will obey me. You will give my son free lemonade or else." Her gestures became wild. She stomped her feet, waved her arms, and even threatened to call the HOA police, whatever that meant in her mind. Ethan's face turned pale, but he stayed calm, repeating firmly, "The price is the same for everyone, ma'am." That's when she did the unthinkable. She turned on her SUV and slammed the door with enough force to rattle the windows of nearby houses. The engine roared like a lion ready to attack. She stared at Ethan with a glare so cold it made my blood run ice cold. I ran toward him, my heart pounding, screaming, "Ethan, get out of the way." But it was too late. Her SUV lurched forward. I froze, my worst fear coming to life right before my eyes. This wasn't just a confrontation anymore. This was a dangerous, life-threatening situation. And in that split second, I knew nothing would ever be the same in our neighborhood again. Ethan froze for a split second as Karen's SUV lurched forward. My heart leapt into my throat. "Move," I yelled, but the world seemed to slow down. I watched in horror as the tires rolled closer to his bright yellow lemonade stand, the one he had spent all week building. Then it happened. Crash. The sound was deafening. The wooden stand splintered under the weight of the SUV, sending cups, pitchers, and coins flying in every direction. Lemonade spilled across the sidewalk like a river of bright yellow liquid. Ethan jumped back just in time, but the edge of the SUV clipped his leg, sending him tumbling to the ground. His scream cut through the neighborhood, raw and terrifying. I ran to him, my legs pounding, adrenaline coursing through me. I scooped him up and held him tight. Tears streamed down his face as he cried, "Dad, she tried to run over me." Karen didn't stop. She rolled down the window, a twisted smirk plastered across her face. "That's what happens when you disrespect HOA board members," she sneered. "Maybe next time, your little business will learn some manners." My blood boiled. I could feel every neighbor's eyes on her, shocked, horrified. But before she could rev the engine again, a hero stepped in, Mr. Thompson, our retired police officer neighbor, calmly but firmly placed himself in front of the SUV. "Lady," he said, holding his phone to record her every move, "you are not going anywhere." The screech of tires, the smell of crushed wood, the sight of my son in pain, it all froze in my mind. Within minutes, sirens wailed in the distance, and I knew that help had arrived. But the image of that moment, the moment Karen's rage nearly caused a tragedy, was something I would never forget. It was terrifying, chaotic, and completely surreal. Karen jumped out of her SUV, suddenly acting like a victim, wiping imaginary tears from her face. "This child attacked me. He scratched my car. He threatened me," she stammered, trying to twist the story. But the officers on the scene weren't buying it. They had seen everything with their own eyes, and the neighbors had recorded the entire incident from multiple angles. Ethan, still trembling and clutching his scraped leg, shook his head. "No, I didn't do anything," he said softly, his voice breaking. One by one, neighbors came forward, showing the officers their videos. There were at least 5 different cameras capturing Karen's SUV barreling toward a child's lemonade stand, clearly reckless and deliberate. The police immediately began writing citations and charging her with reckless endangerment, destruction of property, and child endangerment. Karen's smirk faltered as the weight of the law finally hit her. She tried to argue, to wave her HOA status around like it was a shield, but it didn't matter. Authority doesn't give anyone the right to endanger a child. Meanwhile, paramedics checked Ethan's leg. Miraculously, it was only sprained, not broken. Relief washed over me, but the emotional toll was heavy. My son had faced danger at the hands of a grown adult, and the memory of that screeching SUV would haunt him for weeks. The neighborhood, which had often feared Karen's wrath, now watched in silent approval as justice took its first steps. The police told us clearly, "She will face charges and consequences." No one, not even an HOA board member, is above the law. For the first time, I felt a sense of relief. The chaos, the fear, and the danger were being met with accountability. Karen's reign of terror had hit a wall, and this time, there was no escaping the consequences. Ethan hugged me tightly, still shaking, but I could see a glimmer of pride in his eyes. He had stood up to her, and justice was finally on our side. After Karen's arrest, you'd think the HOA would finally support us. But they didn't. Instead, they tried to shift blame onto us, claiming Ethan created conflict in the neighborhood. They even hinted that he had violated some obscure, street vending rule. I stared at them in disbelief. How could a neighborhood organization prioritize a grown adult's tantrum over a child's safety? That's when the neighbors stepped in. People who had quietly watched Karen terrorize the street for years finally spoke up. They started a petition demanding her removal from the HOA board and the dismissal of any complaints against Ethan. Within hours, more than 80 neighbors had signed. Photos, videos, and eyewitness accounts flooded the HOA office, leaving no room for doubt. Karen had acted recklessly, maliciously, and illegally. The HOA had no choice. Karen was removed from the board immediately, and the complaint against Ethan was thrown out. Court-mandated anger management and legal repercussions followed, ensuring she would think twice before ever endangering a child again. Justice had been served, not just for Ethan, but for every family she had tried to intimidate. As for Ethan, he didn't just recover, he thrived. The neighborhood rallied around him, donating materials and money to rebuild his lemonade stand. Local news even covered the story, and the line of customers stretched down the block. His small act of courage had become an inspiration. When I asked him how he felt, he wiped his tears, smiled, and said, "Dad, Karen tried to break my stand, but she made it stronger." That moment hit me harder than any legal victory ever could. Ethan had learned resilience, courage, and the power of standing up for what's right, even when facing a grown adult with authority. And as I looked around at our supportive neighborhood, I knew one thing for sure. Sometimes, justice isn't just about punishment, it's about rebuilding, standing tall, and turning a terrifying moment into a triumph.